Hello, good morning, welcome. I see people are coming in from the waiting room. Thank you all for being here this morning. Just going to give it just another moment. I imagine if your cadence of your days is like mine, you are finishing another Zoom or electronic meeting that ends right at 10, and then you have to find the new link and click over. I'll hold for just a moment as folks transition. We are recording this webinar, so it will be available if you miss anything and want to go back. The format for today is I'm going to do a very brief overview of the grant program in case there are people on today that haven't attended our previous webinars, so you have a sense of the eligibility and the focus for this grant cycle that's open right now. And then I'm going to turn over the content to my colleagues in our SRA team. So before we get going, I will do some brief introductions. My name is Deb Vaughn. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the grants manager here at Travel Oregon. I work with the competitive grant program. I'm joined this morning by my colleague, Suzanne. Suzanne, would you like to unmute and say hello?
Yes, thanks, Deb. My name is Suzanne. My pronouns are she, her, and I am a grant specialist here at Travel Oregon. And for the 2026 competitive grant program, I will be supporting Deb in the coordination of this program. So thank you.
Thank you. Suzanne, you just said that like ominously, like for this cycle, I'll be supporting Deb. Like you're not going to support me in the future.
I
Um,
will be supporting you in the future as well.
Oh, it's great to work with Suzanne, and we'll pop up our contact information later. But just know that when you email the grants@traveloregon.com inbox, it is often Suzanne on the other end of those emails. So it's wonderful that she can be here today, so you can all put a face to the resources and support that you're getting electronically from us. We also have two members of our strategy research and analytics team. I think I got the acronym SRA correct, but please adjust if I'm wrong. Hannah, do you want to introduce yourself and say hello first?
Sure. Hi, I'm Hannah. Um, I work as a strategy manager on the SRA team. I work with Javier and have been very involved in all of our research studies, and then I manage the execution of our 10-year strategic vision and our biennial plan. So happy to be here today.
Awesome. Thanks, Hannah. Javier, you want to say hi?
Yeah. Hey everyone. Thank you for being here. My name's Javier Parada. I am the research manager at Travel Oregon, so that means I oversee the research program, and I'll be showing you a little bit of some of our resources that we think can be really helpful for you today. So excited to get into it.
Awesome. Thank you both so much. For those of you on the webinar just listening, this grant cycle was developed in really close, I hope it feels like close collaboration with our SRA team, working to align the investment of these funds with Travel Oregon's not only our 10-year strategic vision, but very specifically our current biennial plan. Biennial is a 2-year cycle aligned with the legislature. So I'm really excited that we can do this co-delivery of this information for you today. So just a little information, you're on mute and your faces are off video. So just please relax and take care of yourself. And we'll be posting some links in the chat so you can see those as we go along, resources that you can use to follow up on. I believe I mentioned the webinar is being recorded, so it will be posted along with the slide deck and resources probably by early next week. And the other thing is that we will be using the Q&A feature to capture your questions. So we will certainly do our best to answer any questions you have during the time we have together. But if we run out of time, again, we'll share that email address so that you can follow up with us. Let's go ahead and launch into overview of the grant program before we go into the specific topic about data and research. So the first thing you need to know is that Travel Oregon, as the state's tourism agency, defines a visitor as someone traveling from more than 50 miles away. If that is an area of focus for your organization, then it's possible that you might be a fit for this grant program, which is open to submissions from local governments, port districts, federally recognized tribes, and nonprofit entities. So if that describes your organization, you're in a good place. All funded projects must extend the visitor season, increasing visitor spending and opportunities for year-round employment. This is the lens through which all proposals in this cycle, and frankly, the next cycle, which I'll talk about in a little bit, will be reviewed. So every project must present a plan for how it will extend the visitor season and how it will show impact on a broad scale. And I want to be really clear in this cycle that's open right now, we're accepting LOIs, letters of intent, up until 5 p.m. on Monday, April 27th. But every project in this cycle needs to show that they're working at a multi-regional or statewide level. So this is a large dollar investment, and so we need to see that broad reach. And that's something to think about before you decide to submit in this particular cycle. Suzanne is going to post the full grant program guidelines in the chat so you can read more specifically about what we're looking for. And I encourage you to read that document before reaching out to us for help with your proposal so you can determine if this is the best fit for your work. So one of the things that makes this current cycle unique is that it was requested specifically by the Oregon Tourism Commission, our governing body, and they really have a desire to better understand what types of projects are taking place across the street, in your local community, taking place across the state that have the potential for a large-scale investment. With that in mind, the minimum award in this cycle will be $500,000. And that's why I mentioned that multi-regional or statewide impact level to align with that high dollar value investment. So with this award amount being so high, matching funds are required. Something else that makes this cycle unique, we don't always require matching funds in this program. But what matching funds means is that for every dollar an applicant receives in a grant award, they must be ready to contribute $1. That might come from their own budget. That might be dedicated staff time to the project or waiving or reduction of fees. Or that match might come from an external source, such as another grant from another entity besides Travel Oregon or a local donor. So what this means in the end is that the smallest total project budget considered in this cycle is $1 million. $500,000 minimum from Travel Oregon, $500,000 minimum match equals a project budget of $1 million. So for those of you for which this scale of project is beyond your current tourism emphasis, please do know that we're already in the planning stages of the next round of competitive grant funding, which will have the same focus on extending the visitor season, but with award amounts closer to what we've done in past cycles, which will be in the $20,000 to $150,000 range, and likely not require matching funds. So if that level of funding is more aligned with the scope and scale of your efforts, we encourage you to sign up for our industry newsletter to receive a notification when that program is ready to open. We'll put a sign up link in the chat. And I want to say that the content that you'll hear on this webinar, the information and resources that are available will be every bit as relevant to that fall cycle as they are to this current one. So please, if you're thinking about a future application, stay on this webinar and continue to listen because it will inform the way that you put together your proposal. So this is my last slide before I turn it over to Hannah and Javier. I just want to give you an idea of the types of projects that we brainstormed that might have the potential to accomplish that goal of extending the visitor season, increasing visitor spend, and opportunities for year-round employment. So we brainstormed the projects on this slide that we thought might be robust enough to really show measurable impact towards that goal during the 2-year funding period. That funding period goes from September of 2026 through September of 2028. But because we're looking to be able to measure impact during that time, this means that projects like feasibility studies or opportunities for Travel Oregon to be the first funding in on a major fundraising effort are not going to be a good fit for this cycle. So all of these project types appear in the grant guidelines if you'd like to refer to them later. I just want to make clear that this list is not exhaustive, and we certainly anticipate seeing proposals for other types of projects, but we wanted to give you an idea of some of our areas of interest. These include outdoor recreation efforts, sports tourism, arts, culture, and other events, transportation, and marketing efforts. Based on the submissions that we receive in the LOI period, the Tourism Commission will invite projects that they would like to move forward to complete a full application. The commission at that time will also provide a recommended request amount for the applicant to base their application around. And that amount, again, will be $5,000, $500,000 or greater. Okay, so on the screen is the contact information to reach Suzanne and I at grants@traveloregon.com. And now I am going to stop screen sharing and turn the slides over to my colleagues, Hannah and Javier.
Thank you, Deb. Let me just set up my share screen. You do
I
need
think I
to
have to
stop
stop
sharing.
sharing.
Yeah.
I know. Hang on just a second. I lost my window. This is not as seamless as it was in my dreams. Stop sharing. Why can't I stop sharing? Why does it only let me share? And now I think you see my email. I don't know what's going on. I'm going to go ahead. I think I've lost my toolbar. Apologies for this. I'm going to go ahead and just leave the webinar and come back in. So you guys have got this. I'll be right back.
All right. So I will set up my screen share now. And part of this will have a live demo component. So there may be some back and forth. So please bear with me as we do that. So as I said before, we're going to be going over a couple of research resources that we believe will be helpful in preparing your grant applications. In terms of today's content, first of all, I'm going to do a brief introduction of research and data in general. We're going to go over our goals for the day. Then we're gonna hop into a quick overview of the data that allows looking at seasonality. After that, we're going to dive into the economic impact of travel report, where I will do a live demo of how to access and use the report. Then we're going to do another live demo of the visitor profile dashboard, which is an interactive tool that I think will be very helpful in determining if there is visitor demand for a specific project, as well as to, in the future, help define target audiences around the project. Lastly, if time allows, we will take a brief look at the resident sentiment dashboard. It's a tool that is very similar to the visitor profile dashboard, but instead of looking at it from the point of view of how the visitors feel about their visit to Oregon, we look at how residents feel about visitors coming to their communities in Oregon. All right, so let's jump in. First of all, why should you use tourism research and data? Research really allows us to make informed decisions by providing data-driven insights. And we can also use research to tell data-backed stories about the value of tourism. We can use it to track progress towards key goals by setting baselines and key performance indicators. And just overall, research really helps us make strategic decisions while minimizing uncertainty. In terms of goals for today, the data we're going to review will hopefully help answer some of the following questions for a grant application, which are: how are you, first of all, defining the extended season? How do you know that your project will help extend it, increase visitor spending, and promote job creation? And if we have time, as I said, we're going into the resident sentiment part. How does your project enhance positive resident perceptions as well as minimize negative resident perceptions? If you do need data or research related help, we do have an online form where you can submit requests. You can scan the code on screen, and you can also access this form via our Ask an Expert program on Travel Oregon's industry site. I believe Hannah will be linking in the chat the research industry site where you can find all of the studies that I'm going to go over and much more. So let's go into how we can look at seasonality. You will be receiving an additional document that has kind of a mix between instructions and links for these resources. So I will be referring to that document. The idea of this PowerPoint is to kind of help you navigate that document effectively. This table I'm showing you right now has figures broken down by month that shows the percentage of hotel rooms that are sold over the course of a year. We refer to hotel rooms sold as demand. The supporting document that you will receive has this data available at the statewide, tourism region, and county levels, and it's detailed by month. In the PowerPoint, I combined the months into 2-month intervals due to space, as well as also only included statewide. Otherwise, we'd have a massive table on here that you would not even be able to read. But that massive table is going to be available for you, so you can see it at the county level. You can see that most overnight stays or rooms sold increase to the highest level between May and August. So projects that bolster visitation outside of these months, which may be different for your destination, are effectively extending the season in your destination. And you may be wondering why we use hotel room demand for this particular statistic. In general, hotel room demand moves in the same direction as overall visitor spend and overall visitation. So it really is a good proxy to understand those other statistics. In this case, we're looking at data combined for demand from 2023, 2024, and 2025. The way to read the table then, as you go through it, it would be, at least how I like to think of it, is we can see that the first row has January and February at 30%. That means that 13% of hotel rooms sold over the course of an average year in Oregon are booked during the months of January and February combined. Okay, let's move on to economic impact of travel.
Javier, can I ask a question on the previous slide?
Yeah.
I just want to clarify, when you say 13% of hotel rooms sold are booked during the months of January and February, does that mean that people are making reservations? Or does that mean that they're booked for use during those months of January and February?
Great question, Deb. Thank you. They are used in those months.
Great.
So
I thought that's what it meant. I just wanted to make sure it was clear that this isn't when people are making future reservations. This is use. When we say booked during the months, that means booked for use during those months.
Yeah, thank you. And
great.
we do have some data around about how long ahead of their trip people plan. We'll get to that in a second once we go into the visitor profile. But this is when the rooms are being used.
Which is great because this is, I think, as you've already said, the most relevant information for positioning a project proposal in this cycle.
Right, let's move on to the economic impact of travel. So this next resource is the Economic Impact of Travel report. It is a report that looks at all travel spending, overnight visits, tourism jobs, and tax collection. The report shows data at the statewide, region, and county level. So now I'm going to go ahead and open up the report to walk you through it. This same page, actually, the picture on here has a hyperlink that you can click, but also in the supporting document that you will receive, you will find a link to the industry side where you can find this report. So I'm going to switch over. Once you click that link, here's a landing page that you're going to see. You're going to want to click on the button that says View the Full 2024 Report. That's going to open up this report. So, sorry. Okay. So, I'm going to be scrolling past a lot of the content because we need to stay within time and it's a huge document. But I do encourage you to spend some time looking at this report in your own time. For today's demonstration, I am going to focus on the county point of view. The statewide and regional data are more detailed, but you will find a similar structure across all geographic levels. So I'm going to scroll down to the table of contents. So this is where we're going to want to look to identify where we want to go to within the document, which is going to depend on which geographic area your project is focused on. For today's example, I wanted to use Wallowa County for navigation. So we're going to see here on the document that Wallowa County is on page 243. So we're just going to use the PDF reader and enter 243 here. Oftentimes, you will find that PDF readers and the pages on the actual document don't coincide. Here, it's put us on page 241. We know we want to get to page 243, so I'm just going to scroll down a little bit. And here we have Wallowa County. This first page shows us an overview of tourism impacts. On screen, we have the amount of visitor spend that supports a single job in this county. And I want you to keep that figure of nearly $44,000 in mind. The second item on here is going to be earnings generated by visitor spend. Earnings corresponds to the revenue that companies doing work in the tourism space receive after all costs and taxes have been deducted. After that, we have two ways of looking at taxes that are generated by visitor spend. One is by seeing how much of all visitor spend goes into paying taxes. As we can see here, it's $5 for every $100 in visitor spend. And the other view is simply taking the total tax revenue generated in the county and dividing it by the number of households that exist in the county. There are other items on this page, as you can see, which I believe are slightly less relevant to today's presentation, but I do, again, encourage people to go through the report. It has good explanations for everything. It has a glossary that you can refer to. But let's keep moving along. The following page right here, titled Direct Travel Impact Summary. This one and the pages that come after are going to show us visitor spend in a variety of manners. So this can already give you an idea of the size of the tourism industry in the county or region where you're hoping to develop your project. For that specifically, I would recommend looking at this first line, which is the total spend per year. So in Wallowa County's case, the total travel spend was $36.2 million in 2024. And as I said, if you want to learn more about what everything means, the report does have a glossary that can explain more as you go through it. Then I think this table also has information that could be relevant to you. It breaks out spending by commodity purchased. So if your project happens to fit nicely into one of these categories at the bottom, you can see here in this last part of the table, it says visitor spending by commodity purchased. It has accommodations, food service, food stores, local transportation and gas, arts, entertainment and recreation, and retail sales. So if your project fits neatly into one of those categories, great. I'd like to look at this and think about how important is each of these categories for the total travel economy. So for example, accommodations, we see that we have $11.7 million spent in accommodations of the total $35 million. So that means that we are close to a third of visitor spending in Wallowa County happens in the accommodation space. Okay, and now I want to go to what I believe is really the most relevant page for your work. This is an overview of overnight visitation. I want to start at the bottom of this page. So in this section that says overnight visitor volume, it shows us the volume by person or party, and it's also divided into nights and trips. And it has years 2022 through 2024. So for example, in 2024, Wallowa County saw 65,610 groups of visitors or parties visit the county, right? They stayed for an average of 2.2 nights, which we can see up here. So if we want to go from party trips to party nights, we really are just multiplying the trips by the number of nights they spent, giving us 146,040 nights. Since each party had an average size of 2.8 people, the total person nights are going from party to person nights. We get to 407,480 person nights. So that's the amount of people, the amount of nights that individual persons spent in Wallowa County during 2024. So you already can have an idea of how many people are coming to your community as visitors. Secondly, on the top part of the page, we can see spending data, again divided by person or party, and is shown per day or for the entire trip. So kind of the same structure. And this, I think, can be really valuable for those of you who are trying to estimate the economic impact that your project may have in the community. If you're able to offer an estimate of how many additional visitors your project is expected to create, or and how many additional nights existing visitors may add to their trip, you can take that number and multiply it by the relevant expenditure figure to get a rough estimate of the economic impact of your project. And by the expenditure figure, I'm talking about the spending that I'm highlighting now. So for example, this is telling us that on average, a person that takes a trip to Wallowa County is spending throughout their trip $157. So how would that look if you were going, if you were trying to estimate the impact of your project? I'm sorry, I accidentally clicked on the hyperlink, but let me get back to the PowerPoint. So let's imagine a project that is bringing in 1,000 additional new visitors to Wallowa County, right? This project would have an economic impact of the 1,000 people that are coming for new trips times the spending that we expect them to provide during their trip, which is 157. So 1,000 by 157 gives us $157,000 per year. Remember I told you to keep in mind that employment number of $44,000, since we know that every $44,000 in visitor spends supports one job, we can assume that our project that's bringing in 157,000 would be able to support 3.5 tourism jobs. We could even go beyond that and estimate the expected earnings and tax collection as seen on screen. We know that companies' earnings are about $63 to $100 spent. So the $157,000 would generate close to $99,000. And we know that about 5% of visitor spend goes into tax revenue. So this $157,000 would generate $7.8 thousand in tax revenue. Now, I know I've thrown a lot at you, and I hope you're already thinking of questions or way to use that. So I appreciate you bearing with me. Please, and just a reminder that the call is being recorded, so if something felt a little overwhelming to take in all at once, I hope you can go back to the call and kind of look through how I went through each of the points. But with that said, let's move on to the visitor profile data, which is another one that I'm really excited to be sharing with you. This is a report that looks at visitors that are coming to Oregon, are coming from other states in the US. People are traveling at least 50 miles within Oregon. And for the first time, we were able to also survey Canadian visitors. This allows us to look at perceptions and motivations that are leading to travel decisions. It allows us to look at trip details such as where are people staying. It allows us to look at how long people are staying. And I highlighted here, or at least tried to highlight activities because I want to focus on that a lot today. But it allows us to see what people are doing once they get here. And it also shows us how satisfied people are with their visitors are with their trip. And I mentioned earlier that it also allows us to look at how people plan for their trip. And to me, it's really just a great tool for you to understand if there's demand for a project, as well as to determine target audiences potentially. So I'm going to go back to my Google Chrome, and I do want to say that this dashboard is not yet on our industry site. It's almost ready. It's a work in progress, but it will be live by Monday for you to use. So this is the landing page for the Oregon Visitor Profile. Here, this button will soon be taking you to the dashboard that looks like this. So in terms of navigating the dashboard, it functions a lot like a file explorer. On the left hand, we have drop-down menus that we can select to see detailed findings. And for today's demonstration, as I said, I'm going to be focusing on the activities that visitors engage in while they're in Oregon. But as you can see, there really are a variety of topics that you can explore, and we will go back to some of them really quick later. But for now, let's move to visitor activities. So we click on the little arrow, gives us the drop-down menu, and we're going to go to activity types. So So the dashboard view is going to be really similar across all questions. It's going to have a chart usually on the left with a table of with details on the right, as you can see here. On the bottom right, you can see the wording for the question that you're looking at. So this is based on a survey. This is the data that we collect for this specific question. So the question reads, which type of activities or experiences did you participate in during this trip? We ask that question and we show them a list of activities that people can select from. It does also have the number of responses down here. So we can see for the total Oregon visitors, we collected 2,737 surveys. But we're going to see how once we filter down to a specific destination, that will actually update and show us how many people who responded to the survey went to the destination. There are two buttons on the top right here. You can see one that says 2025. This one allows us, this is the second time we've done this survey in this format. This button allows us to look at the 2022, 2025 numbers, as well as the combined figures. I would generally recommend for your use case to stay with the 2025 figures, as we are facing a slightly different tourism environment between 2022 and 2025. The second button on screen is what I like to call the on-screen filter. Right now it's set up to show visitor origin. So the table on screen on the right is showing us where the visitors came from as kind of a filtering, but I'll show you what happens when I change it. So for example, if I select Oregon's key niches, you can see that the table on screen actually changes, but for today's use, we're going to leave it at visitor origin. So yeah, here we can see in-state, out-of-state, and Canadian responses and the sample size for each of those. On top of the page, there is another button that I want to bring your attention to, and I like to refer to it as the drop-down filters. We click on filter and it really shows us all of the filtering we can use to apply to the data. This is an option that you want to use to look at, for example, if you're wanting to understand how visitors to a county behave, this is what you would use. Please note that this is the internal version of the facing version of the dashboard, so it's the one I use. The external facing version might have less or different filters than what you're seeing here. For the demonstration, I'm going to use a regional filter. And the instructions on the support document that you will receive will let you know how to navigate to county level if needed. But for today's example, I'm just going to focus on Southern Oregon. So you might have noticed that the results changed slightly because we have filtered and now we're only looking at visitors who went to Southern Oregon. Or that said that they visited a city in Southern Oregon. We can see here that similar to the statewide results, the most popular activities are eat and drink, outdoor rec, and shopping. We can also see whether these activities served as a primary motivation to come to Oregon. So I know we're still like at a very high level, but now we can start getting a little more specific. So this page, and I do want to note that you do have to reapply the filter every time you go to another page. But then when you go back to a page that you've already filtered, the filter will be applied. So you're essentially doing it once per page at most. This page shows us for the folks that selected at least one activity, we asked them a follow-up question. We asked them, of the activities you participated in, were any of those the primary motivation for your most recent trip? And in first place, just over a quarter of Southern Oregon respondents said that their primary motivation to come to Oregon was outdoor recreation. So I think this is interesting because we saw that a lot of people engage with eat and drink, but not as many people are actually taking their trip decision to take a trip based on that, but rather basing it around outdoor rec. So this kind of really start to give you an idea of potential visitor base that you could engage with your project idea if it were in the outdoor rec space in this case. However, these are fairly broad activity categories, but if you look on the left side, we do have a lot more detail. So I want to show you an example with the outdoor rec category and how much detail we actually collect from our respondents. So I'm going to apply the regional filter again. And essentially, if you selected that you participate in outdoor rec, you get a follow-up question with a pretty hefty list of activities that we categorize under outdoor rec. You can see it's a very long list. So we're not just asking people if they engage in outdoor rec, but rather, did you go hiking? Did you visit state parks? Did you go swimming? Did you go mountain biking? And so on. So here we can see what are the activities that are leading visitation that are most popular for Southern Oregon visitors. So hiking tends to be at the top across the board. But let's imagine that you are applying for a grant to support mountain biking trail development. You can see that roughly 1 in 8 visitors to Southern Oregon, right here, it says mountain biking at 12.4%. So 1 in 8 visitors to Southern Oregon engage in mountain biking. We already know how many people are coming to Southern Oregon based on the economic impact report that I was just showing you, right? Well, we didn't actually look at Southern Oregon, but we could. So you could combine this 1 in 8 visitors with the total overnight visitation from the economic impact report to estimate how many total visitors to your destination engage in the activity. And the way the data is broken down on this table, I think can be helpful in supporting your project. For example, if an outdoor rec focused project, you could point out how it's not just benefiting out-of-state folks coming to the destination, it's also benefiting residents of Oregon because these many are also participating. And then another thing I want to show you here is that you can apply filters on top of filters. So for example, if you're building accessible trails, you could even go as far as we have a filter for visitors with disabilities, so people who self-identify as having a disability. And then we can see visitors to Southern Oregon who identified with having a disability, what activities are they engaging in? Again, I think this can really help bolster your project ideas. Now I want to show
Javier,
you, yes?
I just want to add that this is really helpful information. And one of the things, to your point about out-of-state visitors versus in-state visitors, I get this question a lot. Does Travel Oregon, when we say visitors from 50 miles away, do we mean 50 miles away from Oregon? And my answer is no, we mean 50 miles away from your destination. So this information can be really helpful in, you would want to likely include some component of in-state visitation in your case making about your project, because as long as those people are coming from more than 50 miles away to your activity, they would be a part of how Travel Oregon would count visitors.
Exactly. Yeah, if I live in the Springfield area, if I'm going to the coast, would be considered tourism. And everyone that responds to this survey, the first question we ask is whether, if they are in Oregon, whether they took a trip over 50 miles. That is the qualifying question. If they didn't, they're not in this survey. So these are all visitors or tourists. So I want to show you some other things that could be helpful in determining things like target audience. For example, we can look at household income. So again, here's the average household income for an Oregon visitor. Self-reported tends to be a little higher than non-self-reported, but the average is 110,000. If we filter to Southern Oregon, we'll see that change. It goes a little bit higher to 114,000. So again, now you start understanding you can get a deeper understanding of who are the people who are coming to your destination. I had also mentioned before planning. So we have a couple of different items around planning. You can see here on the left side of the screen, I navigated all the way to the bottom. And the first thing we ask is, how far ahead of your trip did you actually plan? So on average, people are planning about 3.6 months ahead of time. And again, we can filter to see, do visitors with disabilities really plan further ahead of time? No, actually, they're reporting that they are planning 3.5 months ahead of time. So you can really play around with the data to get an idea of who your potential audience is. Okay, I'm gonna switch back to the PowerPoint. Okay. How are we looking on time? Do we have time to go about 5 minutes into resident sentiment?
I think that would be fine, and people can certainly begin to populate their questions into the Q&A, and then we'll have those ready when you finish this section.
Awesome. Okay, so let's take a real quick look at resident sentiment. This is a report. So I said before, the visitor profile looks at how visitors feel and engage during their trip to Oregon. Resident sentiment takes a look at how Oregonians feel about visitors coming to their community. The way we do this is we look at sentiment towards tourism's positive and negative impacts across 4 dimensions. So we look at economic positive impacts of tourism, economic negative impacts of tourism. We do the same for environmental, social, and cultural. We do also measure support for tourism development and a series of other things, but these are what I think would be most helpful in understanding support for a project. So we have a really similar looking dashboard for resident sentiment as we do for visitor profile. Therefore, the navigation is also very similar. And sorry. There we go. Where I would recommend you to go in this study specifically, so would be go to detailed findings, resident perceptions towards tourism impacts, and start with the overall perceptions towards tourism impacts. This page, it just tells us, oh, it's actually pre-filtered for Wallowa because that's what I was looking at before. This page tells us whether residents perceive positive impacts to outweigh negative ones or vice versa. In this case, what we can see is that on this scale from 1 to 5, the negative impact perceptions are rated at 3.7, while the positive impact perceptions are rated at 3.2. Being that the negative impacts are rated higher, that means that these residents for Wallowa County perceive the negative impacts to outweigh the positive ones. If we go back to the statewide view, we can see that it's a different story. Overall, people rate the positive impacts at higher than the negative ones. So the case is the opposite, where positive impacts outweigh the negative ones. This is where we want to be. The Wallowa County situation is not ideal. And generally, we do see that for places that have a lot of tourism, and especially if they have smaller resident populations, we do see slightly more negative perceptions. Now, this is really broad, and we can slowly start to break it down by going to this next page titled Resident Perceptions Towards Tourism Impacts. So we're going from overall to those 4 dimensions that I just mentioned. Again, this is filtered for Wallowa. So we already know that the negative perceptions outweigh the positive ones, but what are the specific dimensions where residents of Wallowa County are encountering issues with tourism? We can see here that for the economic dimension, they're a lot closer. There's not as much outweighing of the negative perceptions against the positive ones. But for the other 3 dimensions of environmental, cultural, and social dimensions, we do see really big, I like to call them big blue bars, which is not what we want to see because they are representing strong negative perceptions of tourism. So across these 3 dimensions, we do see the negative perceptions outweighing the positive ones. And in this case, this already gives you an idea. Like if you have a project that helps mitigate negative environmental impacts of tourism, then that might be more likely to garner support in a place like Wallowa County, where residents are really feeling that tourism has very negative environmental impacts. But we can go one step deeper than that and navigate on the left of the screen to perceptions of tourism's negative environmental impacts. So what this gives us is the exact list of items that we present to residents that they are rating on that 1 to 5 scale. So, for example, residents of Wallowa County rate the statement, tourism leads to increased noise level at a 4 out of 5. So they agree that tourism is leading to increased noise levels. The same thing for increased litter and waste. So again, projects that help mitigate those issues are more likely to garner support. And you can navigate negative impacts across all four dimensions, and we can also navigate positive impacts among all four dimensions. So, for example, this is for statewide. Residents agree in general that tourism is an important part of the success of local business. But when we filter to Wallowa, the agreement level is similar. So that's not really the issue. But maybe there are issues around people perceiving that tourism does not lead to increased income levels. So I think some like projects that can help generate jobs or generate awareness of the positive impacts in the economy of tourism could be garnering more resident support.
Javier,
Yeah.
this is really connected to the information that we presented, that Alexa Carey presented on the Destination Stewardship webinar that we offered last week, about balancing the economic benefits, environmental benefits and impacts, visitor experience, and resident sentiment. So I put the link to the recording of that webinar in the chat. If people were not present on that, the research that you just shared is a direct way to build the case for including a destination stewardship approach in designing projects.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I've worked a lot with Alexa. We've worked a lot with Alexa and the Destination Stewardship team, and just creating awareness and understanding of this data. It really helps us. As we said at the beginning, it helps you set goals and baselines and key performance indicators to track whether, to track what your work is doing. So thank you for making that connection. And that brings us to the end. I've included my email here at the bottom. I did also put the link to the brief earlier, but you can also find that on our industry website under the Ask an Expert program. And I think we have some time for questions there. I don't know if
That's great.
next time here.
Yeah, we have one question that came in that I'd love for you to answer, because I think, and you might want to screen share again, but the question was on the monthly lodging report. The example you showed was focused on the current month, and the question is, can we see prior months in that report?
Yeah. So I think that question is referring to the lodging report that we have on our industry side that shows, the latest month, demand, occupancy, supply, ADR, and more, and RevPAR. Unfortunately, due to our agreement with the data provider that is CoStar, we cannot share historical data. For that, we can only share the most recent month. What you can find is that my colleague Dipti, she is in charge of the analytics part of our program. She shares out a monthly update that includes data for short-term rentals, and that does have historical. It's not as robust as the hotel data, unfortunately, but that one does have historical data. But for the hotel, we unfortunately cannot share the historical.
But Javier, on the resource they'll get, you did provide a table that has 12 months of data, right, from 2025.
Yeah. It's slightly different because the table I'm providing is just the average demand per county, per region, and for the state for every month for the past 3 years. I think what they're asking about is specific figures that they can look at. They're not just the latest month. But yes, the table in the document will have the average for the past 3 years over the 12 months for the state, region, and counties.
Oh, thank you. I think I put in the chat that it was the calendar year of 2025, but I was incorrect. So it's the average of the past 3 years?
Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha.
Helpful to know. And April, hopefully that answered your question. And if other people are formulating questions, please, we'll give it a minute for those to come through. But I just want to appreciate the deep dive into the nuance of all of this information and how transparent this presentation has helped make some of the information that Travel Oregon provides. And I also want to acknowledge for our potential applicants that there's limited character spaces in the application and in the LOI. So we're providing this information not in the sense that you have to regurgitate to us all of our own data in your presentation of your project idea. We're asking that you take this information into consideration as you're preparing your project, knowing that the more connected to this data your proposal is in its conceptualization, the stronger it will be in the review process. So I put in the chat, but do want to emphasize that our grant reviewers have access to this same data and information, and that they can use to evaluate and enhance their understanding of the viability of your project. But we don't expect you to fill your entire narrative with advanced financial calculations. We just want you to be informed at the level of information we have.
Yeah, thank you, Deb. I should have mentioned early on that really the goal of sharing the data is to help strengthen applications, not to put more barriers in the place of applicants. That was one of my talking points that I failed to mention early on.
Well, I appreciate your understanding about that. We have another question from somebody curious if Travel Oregon collects data on how visitors travel. For example, if they're coming by vehicle, is it an electric vehicle? Do you have any of that information or resources to suggest?
Yeah, on the same visitor profile dashboard that will be made available very soon, we have how people arrive and how people move within Oregon. So we can see whether they came in a rental car, airplane, own car, EV, and a couple of other options. And then within Oregon, how they moved around. Again, same list. It's no airplane. But if they move around in their own car, and if they select car or rental car, we do ask a follow-up, was that an EV or not? That should all be on the dashboard.
That's an awesome resource. I have a question just about how generous you all have been in sharing your contact information and the Ask an Expert resource. Can people watching this webinar reach out to you even if they're not currently applying for a competitive grant?
Yeah, definitely. We try our best to respond to all the questions we get. And it's what's really helpful, and what I really like about the brief, the intake form, is that it kind of forces you to set a timeline, and that's really helpful for our planning. There are some times that I have had to say no to requests, but I will at the very least point you in the right direction. Like if it's something that would require a new project, I can even show you like what are some vendors that I think could be helpful. But if it's a basic question, I'm always happy to answer and love community engagement as somebody who is mostly behind the computer working. So yes, please feel free to reach out.
Thank you so much. I'm not seeing any more questions come in. And so I think at this point, I will just express huge amounts of gratitude to Javier and Hannah. I think Brian is also on this webinar, and Dipti is on the team as well, for all the work that you put into kind of filtering this information and making it really accessible and available to our potential applicants. And it means so much. And then the generous offer of being available for people to contact you and ask questions related to this grant cycle and outside of it. Natalie, I see your question. How soon will this be available online? I would say for the recording of this webinar, Monday by Monday is our goal. And then at that time, we should also be able to share the resource document that Javier mentioned. And we should have also the updated dashboard that Javier talked about. It's not quite public yet, but that dashboard will go live early next week. So we'll get the information to you as soon as possible. So with that, thank you to my colleague Suzanne. Thank you for making all of the tech go smoothly. I appreciate any tech glitches were entirely my fault on this webinar. So really appreciate everyone's time, and look forward to hearing from all of you and seeing some proposals in this cycle and cycles going forward into the future. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.